Tennessee landed Aaron Willis today. That's a linebacker, four-star linebacker. They landed Caden Salter today. That's a four-star quarterback. We told you that was coming. Steve Wilfong's been all over both of those for a little while. More on that later. But as I told you to lead the show, every time Tennessee has landed a commitment, and that has been several times over the past couple of weeks alone. Remember, they've been on this recruiting surge. Every time they've landed one, I've had a couple of reactions on Twitter. It's either been Tennessee fans excited out of their mind, which you should be, or it's been rival fans saying, well, he was only rated this, or their average star ranking is only this, or, well, they're still not going to beat Georgia. They're still not going to finish top 5. Well, okay. But that's my point. My point is, you all keep going to Georgia. Y'all keep comparing Tennessee to Georgia. I'm looking at Florida. Why are we not paying attention to the gap between Tennessee and Florida? Because that team there in Gainesville is standing, as I see it, between Tennessee and Georgia. So let's dive into this for a second, because I want to talk a lot about Florida here. And I want to talk about maybe how good enough is not enough in Gainesville, Florida. Sometimes I get accused of only talking about the positives with these programs. Well, I don't think it's the worst business strategy in the world in the spring and summer. There's going to be quite enough losing in the fall where we can talk negatively about programs, teams, players who maybe need to have some negative light shined on them. But let's be real here for a second. And that's all I ask our Florida viewers and fans to be. Let's just be real here for a second, because I'm not trashing your program. There's no reason to trash your program. Florida football is either good, very good, or great in pretty much every category. Here's the problem. They are great in the coaching department. They are great in the game day management department. No one's ever questioning that, and if you do, then I'll argue back with you. I don't think anyone's calling Florida recruiting great. I don't think you guys, if you're honest with yourselves, are calling your current recruiting staff great. Tim Brewster, you may have a couple of guys that individually you would say are great. Collectively, is the recruiting at Florida right now great? It's not. Here's the problem you may run into. I want you to think, I've always been a believer. Ever since I started doing this professionally, I've always been a believer that any kind of metaphor, any kind of analogy I ever need to use to make an illustration about football can be found in traffic. So let's put ourselves in the back seat of an Uber, and you're on the interstate, and you come up on construction. And you know the drill. You got to get in a single file line, and traffic is slowed down to a crawl, and no one likes it, but you got to go through it. Well, you don't have a problem with that. You're not going to get mad at your Uber driver or your taxi driver because they've slowed to a stop. That's what everyone has to do. You're in a single file line. That's not what makes you mad. Okay? Florida could be sitting right behind Georgia, and that doesn't make them mad. Here's what's going to enrage Florida fans. What's going to enrage them is if all of a sudden the dude who wants to skip 30 minutes of traffic has flown up past them and the driver's asleep at the wheel and Tennessee cuts right in front of you after you have had your stuff in place long before they ever hired the head man that they have up there. That's what's going to really, really enrage a lot of Florida folks. You don't have a problem. Well, you got a problem with it. You understand being behind Georgia right now. If Tennessee is able to bypass Florida, that's something that's inexcusable. Should be inexcusable to Florida fans. Has it happened yet? Absolutely not. Could it happen? Let's talk about it. Because I think, and this is an opinion I hold, and I'm free to argue with you guys on it. I'm a believer that if things continue on current trajectory, I'm a believer Tennessee, as a roster, Jeremy Pruitt's roster, will bypass what they have at Florida in a couple of years. I don't think that they lack for coaching acumen at Tennessee. I think some people are hoping they do. I think some people are either hoping this recruiting class falls apart, or this recruiting effort falls apart, or it's fool's gold, it's a mirage. They've just landed some kids early and everyone else is going to bypass them late in the game. And I don't think that that's the case. I'm not telling you Tennessee's about to finish top 3, but and don't even think about this class in particular. Think bigger picture. If the recruiting apparatus at Tennessee starts to consistently click at a higher level than it does at Florida, eventually you get a better roster in Tennessee than you do at Florida. That doesn't happen overnight. Certainly it doesn't happen overnight. But I believe on our current trajectories here, given what we see at Florida, given what we see at Tennessee, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Now, what would things look like if that did happen? Because I, independent of what Tennessee's been doing, have said for quite a while, Florida is in this weird spot. They've been in this weird spot for quite a while. They're not bad. When you're bad, everyone can see something has to change. that's the problem in a way, if you want to call it that, at Florida. Florida's been one of the best programs in America. Florida's gone to back-to-back New Year's Six Bowls. Florida has been very good. They got one of the best head coaches in America. Last year, to give you an idea of how good that coaching staff is, I mean, they lose their multi-year starting quarterback and just seamlessly, not only do they put a backup quarterback in, but by all accounts, they upgrade their production, and they just on a dime spin what they're doing and go like air raid, which they had not been doing previously. And so that coaching staff, they leave little doubt about how good they are. We're talking recruiting for a second. And the reason that I think Florida's recruiting has got to be better is not because it's bad, but it's good. It's good to very good in a league where there's just a little bit too much great. Alabama's in this conference. Georgia, you got to play them every year. LSU, you got to play them every year. Florida's not light years behind them in recruiting, but they are behind them in recruiting. You can't afford for another one of your rivals to pull up to that table. Again, Tennessee's not there yet. They're getting closer every day to being there. So I look at their staff right now, and I was talking to someone earlier today, very close to the Florida program, and I just kind of said, I look at this program, but you're really close to them. What do you think? Describe Florida's recruiting staff. And it was essentially what I think. Tim Brewster is a guy who, I think most coaching staffs would want in their circle when it comes to recruiting. Craig Fitzgerald is a good recruiter they have. Behind that, who do you have that you feel confident can win those in-state battles? I know it sounds crazy right now to suggest that, Tennessee football, man, you look up and all of a sudden they're going to be a contender in the East. Well, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm going to talk about Tennessee a little bit later on. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I am saying is everyone can see something coming once it's there. There's no skill in that. What we're trying to do here is look at Tennessee, say, they got something going up there. I think even the most cynical among us can recognize, hey, there's some nice positive momentum up there. Some of you think it's this sort of cute, gimmicky sort of momentum that's going to die off. I don't tend to think that, but whatever the case may be, I'm just telling you, I really wish that Florida would be a whole lot more proactive in getting serious about putting together a better recruiting staff. That's all I'm telling you. It may be that Florida, and I know they always like to wait maybe until a little bit later in the year. They love to get guys on campus during the season. It may be they make a move and finish top 5 in recruiting this year. And all this is moot. And if it is, I'll be happy to go back and say, yeah, you know what I said back in May? Forget about all that. But at this point, we look at Florida and kind of have been what they've been recruiting, which is good, but not great. Tennessee's ceiling, this recruiting staff ceiling, is not just good, guys. It's not just very good. They've got an elite ceiling on their recruiting potential here. Maybe not this class. This class is going to be really good in its own right, but in the future, I think they can be great. So let's just keep an eye on that.